Scott Morrison leaving for work this morning as Australia learns the Morrison government had much more Morrison in it than anyone realised.
Scott Morrison was appointed to 5 additional portfolios: health, finance, treasury, resources, home affairs.
Hello, I'm Paul Berry. Welcome to Media Watch. And the astonishing secrets of our former Prime Minister dominated the news last week as we learnt more and more about how he deceived the public, the Parliament and his ministers. In the words of the 9 papers, our last PM made himself
Minister for Everything.
And almost all his ministers were kept in the dark, with former Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews saying,
"No, I had no idea that he had sworn himself into the portfolio that I was responsible for or any other portfolio."
And Sky's political editor Andrew Clennell revealing,
"It's my understanding that Matthias Cormann had no idea."
And the PM's right-hand man was also unaware that he was sharing his job.
That list now includes his close friend, former Treasurer Josh Frydenberg.
And what did the media think of this secret takeover? The Courier Mail called it
Morrison's weirdest move as PM.
While the Herald Sun summed up what many were thinking.
My party and a life I want to.
And things weren't much better on the international stage, with damning reports in the United States, Germany and Britain, and the Financial Times warning in an editorial,
It is a reminder of the need for vigilance in shoring up the processes and institutions of democracies.
And if Morrison hoped for a better hearing from conservative publications like The Spectator, he was disappointed, with it asking,
Has Scott Morrison become Australia's Richard Nixon?
And giving the answer,
Morrison acted with a secrecy that disgraced US President Richard Nixon would have approved of, and then seemingly expected to be praised for it afterwards.
So, where did this firestorm over Morrison's secret ministries all begin? Answer with this front-page headline 9 days ago in the Weekend Australian.
Revealed. ScoMo's secret COVID moves to protect power.
That story, by political journalists Simon Benson and Jeff Chambers, detailed how Morrison was sworn into the health and finance portfolios in the early days of the pandemic in March 2020. And it presented his move as a prudent and important measure, with all the details supposedly
revealed in a new book, Plagued,
which promised the inside track on how the government managed the pandemic. Asked about the book at an hour-long press conference to defend his actions, the former PM revealed,
"That book was written based on interviews that were conducted at the time, in the middle of the tempest."
So, if they'd known about Morrison's secret moves on the health and finance portfolios, why did the book's authors sit on the yarn? Well, it seems they had no idea how big the story was or how much power the PM had grabbed. And nor did the rest of the media, until Samantha Maiden revealed an exclusive of her own.
Scott Morrison secretly swore himself in as Resources Minister and ultimately used the power to roll his own frontbencher, Keith Pitt.
That was 48 hours after the initial revelation. And when RN's Andy Park assumed it was just a drip feed from the authors, Maiden took him to task.
This information wasn't in the book. They didn't know anything about Keith Pitt. I broke that story on Sunday night. So when you talk about the drip feed, I mean, forgive me, but I get very frustrated with this idea that, like, this is a drip feed, it's all coordinated. This is journalism.
With 3 secret ministries now revealed and the outcry growing, Morrison set about mounting a defence. And he called in on 2 of his radio mates, including Kiss FM's Kyle Sandilands, who was clearly on his side.
What's everyone in a big, put their panties in a twist over? What is all this?
I think you summarised it well. I mean, it was unconventional times. It was incredible.
Next was 2GB's Ben Fordham, who invited Morrison to reveal if he had taken over any more ministries.
Are there any other portfolios that you assumed any control over?
Not to my recollection, Ben.
In fact, there were 2 he'd forgotten to mention. And how could he not recall? A question Andrew Bolt was soon asking.
Oh, did I get the Governor-General to swear me in as Treasurer too? Clean forgot. Happens to me all the time. Hey, did I just make myself the King of Albania? Slipped my mind. Too busy.
And with the floodgates open, the online satirists went to town, including this mashup from Remix Matrix.
I had one focus, but I wanted more jobs, and so I gave myself thousands of jobs.
I had jobs, and more jobs.
From Home Affairs to Health to the ADF to Treasury to a whole range of different parts of government.
And next day, the Canberra Times was letting readers know all about the best and funniest tweets and memes. And bizarrely, even Scott Morrison joined in the fun, taking to Facebook to say he was feeling amused and posting his own memes.
Minister for Memes, the Scott Morrison saga continues, the former PM now making light of the ministry scandal.
And that then prompted return fire from the Daily Telegraph.
Secret ministries, all a bit of a joke to ScoMo.
And what to make of it all? Well, it's strange, baffling, bizarre. But most in the media reached for one word to describe it.
It's weird, it's bizarre.
It's just really weird and it's almost creepy.
Just so weird.
Well, it is weird and it's wacky, like you said.
Weird? I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
This is pathological behaviour. He wasn't overseeing a democracy, it was an autocracy, a dictatorship.
Writing in The Australian today, one columnist suggested it'll all be just a footnote when the history books are written. But somehow, I think it's more likely to be Scott Morrison's legacy. But now to the courts, and a defamation case which ended in expensive and humiliating defeat last week for former sports reporter Josh Massoud. Massoud, you may recall, was famously sacked from the Seven Network in May 2018 after monstering a colleague.
Seven Network sports reporter Josh Massoud has been suspended from his job after it's claimed he threatened to slit a rookie reporter's throat and shit down his neck.
The Daily Telegraph reported that Massoud made the threats to an 18-year-old producer who had spoiled Massoud's TV exclusive by posting it on social media half an hour before Seven's 6 p.m. bulletin. And this was the story.
Well, as reported first on 7 News late this afternoon, Todd Carney is set to return to Sydney for family reasons. Carney was hopeful of resurrecting his NRL career in Townsville with the Cowboys, but the controversial 2010 Dally M medalist has informed North Queensland officials of his decision.
Yes, that's it. Not exactly scoop of the century. But a furious Massoud had called up the 18-year-old producer, Jack Warren, to tell him,
if you weren't so young and inexperienced, I'd probably come up there and rip your head off and shit down your throat.
Warren's colleagues complained and Massoud was dismissed. And 2GB's Ray Hadley, who'd had previous run-ins with Massoud, went to town. Hadley's original broadcast has been taken down for legal reasons, but this milder version, a few months later, should give you the flavour.
This character, of course, lost his job at Channel 7 in May after allegedly making graphic threats to kill a 21-year-old staff member based in regional Queensland. There was allegedly a threat to cut the throat of the young worker. I've never come across one person with any sympathy for this bloke, either who's worked with him or been reported by him. He's universally disliked.
Massoud sued 2GB, along with Kiss FM, Nine, Fox Sports and the Telly. But why did he do so, given that he'd admitted to his foul-mouthed threats? The nub of his claim, Justice Mark Leeming told the New South Wales Supreme Court last week, was that
his reputation was harmed by publication of items stating that he had been dismissed following his threatening that he would slit the throat of a young colleague, when in fact he was dismissed following his threatening that he would rip off the head and shit down the throat of a young colleague.
Yes, really. Massoud's case was shredded by District Court in 2021, and this was an appeal against the decision. But it did not go well. And it's hard to see why the reporter ever thought that it would. Massoud's lawyers readily admitted in their submissions that he had resigned from his previous job at News Corp and apologised for his, at times, appalling conduct. And the District Court found, after evidence from colleagues, that he was objectionable, aggressive and abrasive. Worse still, his threats to producer Jack Warren had clearly left the young man traumatised.
A colleague in the newsroom who heard Mr. Warren's side of the call as it happened saw him crying, shoulders slumped, asked him whether he was okay, at which point he started to cry even more.
Another colleague told the court
he was broken. You know, we often see parents who have lost kids in crashes or been murdered or whatever, and you see them just totally distraught, filled with grief, and that's what Jack was like. He was just inconsolable.
Massoud claimed that he hadn't shouted, wasn't angry, had heard the phrase in a film and was attempting black humour. But Justice Leeming found he was not a witness of credit, rejected his evidence and dismissed his appeal with costs, which are likely to come to more than $1 million. And what does Massoud have to say about the decision and about taking on those 5 media outlets? He told MediaWatch,
I have regrets and made mistakes, but taking legal action is not one of them. I was buried under digital cement that I felt was untrue, unfair and more damaging than my actions warranted. I had no other viable choice to correct the record. Yes, it has cost me materially. However, I'm stronger mentally because I stood up for what I believe, no matter what the price.
Well, good, I guess, that he doesn't regret it, because in money terms, at least, the price will be high. But now, to the TV event of the year. And if you don't know what it is, then you haven't been watching Sky News.
A red carpet beneath a castle featuring fur cloaks, armour and a throne. All for the most anticipated television series of the year.
And all the dragons roared as one.
For months, Sky hosts have been counting the days until the launch and bringing Game of Thrones fans all the big news.
The official trailer for the much-anticipated Game of Thrones prequel, House of the Dragon, has been released.
Foxtel will exclusively premiere the world's most anticipated new series, House of the Dragon, in 4K Ultra HD. This is exciting.
Australian actor Ryan Cora has told Sky News about the challenges he faced while filming the Game of Thrones prequel, House of Dragon.
Serious journos can't be thrilled at having to read all this puffery, but Peter and Laura did a pretty good job.
You a fan, Laura Jays?
I am. A prequel.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
It looks good. And 4K Ultra. You can only get it here on Foxtel.
Give that man a raise. But others look less comfortable puffing the dragon.
For the first time, they'll be able to get up close and personal with the dragon world at an immersive experience at Comic-Con in California.
Ooh, that was awkward. And take it from us, no one at Sky was off the hook when it came to spruiking the goods. We've counted 25 stories plugging the new series. And the News Corp papers also couldn't get enough, with 16 dragon puffs in the Daily Telegraph, including a 5-page feature on the Australian actress Millie Alcock and a special Dragon Confidential. And yes, even the Australian is in on the dragon action. But somehow, none of the News Corp papers had room for this bit of news, which was not entirely positive.
Foxtel Australia's CEO sparks outrage after calling Game of Thrones star Emilia Clarke a short and dumpy girl.
Foxtel apologises after CEO calls Game of Thrones star short, dumpy girl.
We'll soon find out if all this shameless promotion is working. But Foxtel's latest revenue figures show that streaming subscribers now represent 62% of the group's customers, and total streaming subscriptions are up 31%, with a lot of that thanks to Binge, which is up 53%. That is a huge turnaround from the old Foxtel, which was seen as old-fashioned and overpriced. But when you've got a publicity machine like they have at News Corp and a Game of Thrones prequel, it's hard to see how you could go wrong. And finally, to the NRL Grand Final and the media frenzy over where it would be played. And let's kick off with this exclusive from 7 News Sydney last Monday.
In breaking news, the NRL has made a decision on whether to move this year's Grand Final from Sydney to Brisbane. Chris Reason is at NRL headquarters for us. Chris, what can you tell us?
Yeah, good evening to you, Mark. Well, 7 News can confirm that the grand final for this year, the official host, will be here in Sydney. News that's likely to be officially confirmed within the next 24 hours, putting to bed the fears, the speculation, the nerves that the game would be again moved to Brisbane.
And did it put those fears to bed? Well, no. Instead, the story was shot down within minutes of going to air, with Chris O'Keefe on 9, which has the Grand Final TV rights, saying the story was premature and no decision had been made by the Rugby League Commission. And next day, 7's own Sunrise was also raising doubts.
NRL boss Peter V'landys has hit back at reports the location of this year's NRL Grand Final has been decided.
And where had those reports and 7's original story come from? 9's Today Show had a suggestion.
It sounds like someone within the New South Wales government is leaking. Peter V'landys isn't happy.
And V'landys was making even more of a fuss about Chris Reason's scoop in that morning's Daily Telegraph.
Mr V'landys said the 7 News report went to air without anybody contacting any NRL official about the details in the story.
In all my career, I have never experienced anything like this, where a story appears to have been leaked that is so utterly misleading.
So, what does 7 have to say about V'landys' stinging criticism and the claim that it did not contact the NRL boss for comment before declaring a decision had been made? Sydney News director Jason Morrison essentially answered that by ducking the question when it was put to him by Media Watch. But he told us that 7 stood by the story.
We had 3 very reliable and informed sources telling us the basis for the deal was done on Monday and the detail was being resolved. The strength of that information didn't change, despite claims across the week that the information was wrong.
So, how did it turn out? Midweek, the grand final appeared to be going to Brisbane, but ultimately it ended in triumph for Sydney.
It's ours!
So, perhaps Chris Reason was right all along. And in good news for punters who enjoy a bidding war over the grand final, get ready for a replay next year, with Volandis wanting to auction off the league grand final to the highest bidding state.
It could go anywhere, absolutely. You know, if you look at the Super Bowl concept, it goes everywhere.
Can't wait for that to play out in the media. And that's all from us for tonight. There's more on our website, including statements from Seven and Josh Massoud. And don't forget Media Bites every Thursday. But for now, until next week, goodbye.